Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Varga, and today I'll be taking you through the August 4th, 2022 release of DB Precision, version 2022.22.8.4. If you have any questions about what we go over during this video, please call 860-540-3690 or email us at support@pensionsoft.com. Okay, let's get started. The main focus of this release is dealing with WorkTrack and enhancements to allow for administrators to assign WorkTrack tasks to other users to better manage workflow processes. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the idea that we added the ability to assign a WorkTrack task to a user. Now, in the past, different users have been able to process different tasks and steps. But now, in addition to saying certain people can do or complete a step, you also can indicate that one of those people or even a different person is assigned to that specifically, so that you can indicate who should be doing what on a step-by-step basis. So if I go to my Manage Workflow button on the Tools tab, I can click into one of these tasks, and under the Basic tab, I see now that I am assigned to this particular task right now. So on the bottom left here, we see Assigned User. That's me right there, and I can select a different person if I have access to do so. This access is defined in user rights in DB Precision. Now, these assignments can allow you to filter out whether something is assigned to you or not. So if I say that I want to hide tasks that are assigned to other users, I'm going to see that one of these tasks is going to go away from my screen. That means that that task has been assigned to someone else. If I were to click into here, that's assigned to someone else. Now, in terms of how that's assigned on a default basis, if I go to my WorkTrack tasks, I click into this first step, I can see that actually for this particular item, there's another user that's assigned as the default user for this particular step. However, someone can come in and override that if they would like to. Once a step is completed, if there's a default assigned user associated with the next step, then that person will become assigned to that task at that point. Otherwise, if there is no default assigned user for the next step, then the person who was assigned to it previously would continue to have ownership of that task. Again, it's not something that all of our users need to use or are going to be forced to use. Now that we've added this, it's just something that you can optionally use to to assign different things to different people. We've also allowed for the specification of separate rights for task creation between administrators and sponsor contact users. So what this just means is, similarly to what we added to our export definitions, previously we just had participant and sponsor right access, and administrators would fall under the sponsor creation rules for this particular task. But now you have the ability to say that an administrator can create something, whereas maybe a sponsor can only view it, and maybe a participant has no access whatsoever, something like that. When email output is generated as part of a WorkTrack request, that email is now also directly linked to the WorkTrack task. So what we're saying here is, if you have emails enabled as part of your WorkTrack task, now that will be stored as an archive to the person's record associated to the WorkTrack task as well. Previously, it was just being stored as an archive, and it wasn't actually associated to the WorkTrack task. Additionally, with WorkTrack, we've added two new email operands: update user ID and update date, which allow users to include the last update date and the user ID of the updating user for a WorkTrack email. So again, if we click into this step right here, and I go to configure my emails for the WorkTrack step, I see now that I can use, I'm surrounded by carets, I can indicate that I want to use a merge field in this email right here. I can start typing out different things and get a drop down here if I want to do that. Additionally, I can insert fields as well by clicking on the insert button. We see those two new fields at the bottom of this list right here. Moving on to person worksheets. We allow access for individual person worksheets to be restricted based upon an employer or group code of a sponsor contact. So if I click into my person worksheet, I now see a little checkbox right here saying limit sponsor access to the following employer group IDs. And in this case, I have a 1 followed by a semicolon and a 2. What this means, like a lot of our inputs throughout DB Precision, if I want to indicate that more than one numeric value satisfies or corresponds with a particular input, I can say 1 semicolon 2, and now sponsor contacts with both a group code of 1 and 2 would both be able to access this on the portal. Now, in terms of how you actually identify which sponsor contacts belong to which group, you would go into the sponsor contact section, and you go to the portal section, and you see at the top of the screen, this particular person has a group code equal to 1, so this person would be able to see that person worksheet on the portal. In addition to the fact that they have person worksheets view access here also. So if they had this top thing satisfying the requirement, but if they have no access to person worksheets, they're not, the group code is not going to override this portal access that you have here. For person worksheet dates, we now format numeric amounts as dates for columns that are reported amounts or plan valuation extract columns when saving as an Excel or CSV. So what this just means is if you have a field like a valuation NRD that is a date field, now in Excel, it will properly display as a date as opposed to displaying as a numeric. We also include a new option to specify text to display if a value is blank or missing when saving as an Excel or CSV file. So what that means is we have a new input. So if I go to one of my rows or one of my columns right here and I double click, I now see that I have a new input. And again, this is only for internet portal display. So that's why we have this little header right here to go around all this other stuff. If you hide a column or if you have these other things enabled for different scenarios, it's only going to impact your internet portal display. Because the grid in DB Precision is something that's actually going to edit your data, we don't convert that at all. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. But in this scenario, we've said text to display if blank is 0 is NA, kind of similar to what we do in an export definition. So what this looks like in practice is if I open this through DB Precision, I'm not going to see a change to that display of zeros being NA. So what I mean by that is there's still some zeros here in DB Precision. Again, that's not going to impact the DB Precision display. However, if I right click on here and I say view in Excel, which is replicating the process of opening the Excel file in the portal, what I will see is I will see some NAs here now. So again, that's the differentiation we have between the DB Precision display and then the Excel display, which is equivalent to what you see on the portal if you open up as an Excel or CSV file on the portal. For the sponsor person changelog, we now allow users to filter by notes and archives. So if we go to the person transaction log within the sponsor, I now have new data items to sort by, to filter by. Previously, those weren't options. And additionally, in the sponsor changelog, we now have added the ability to show changes to text conversions as well. Lastly, on the sponsor screen, we've included a new sponsor option to specify whether the new dynamic snapshots that we just rolled out last release should be run for a particular sponsor or not. So what this means is, while we don't recommend this for any of our clients, we do want our clients to get comfortable with the dynamic snapshot process if they have an internet controller. And we do think there's some value there for portal-enabled clients to show up to the date data in your person worksheets. However, if you need to remove this functionality for any reason, if it interferes with your day-to-day processes, you have a lot of our clients have had this offer for a while now. They don't want to necessarily change their processes. If you want to opt out for a particular sponsor, you can uncheck this box for enable dynamic snapshots. Moving on to the plan document. We've added a couple of new functions. First function is a get snapshot date function that returns the latest snapshot date. So this is a pretty straightforward function. You're using the get snapshot date function, and then you have either a 0 or a 1, which just returns the latest snapshot date or the latest locked snapshot date. This will not return the dynamic snapshot date if your plan is using dynamic snapshots. The reason for that is if you have it enabled for this sponsor, it's going to be equal to today every time, unless there's an issue with your internet controller. So there's really not value there. So this is basically allows you to say, when was the last time we actually finalized the data? Was it last year or was it this year? Something along those lines. Additionally, we've added a function for returning tax details. So the get tax detail function is now available, where you would reference your benefit payment set in quotes. Just like anytime you see a formula function, make sure that anything that's shown in quotes in the tooltip actually has quotes, is turned pink. And then the type is going to be one of the followings from the tooltip menu. Basically, this is going to allow you to show the month or annual non-taxable benefit for a joint or a single life benefit, as well as some other items related to that item. We also added 2 new calculation methods that credit service if a person worked a certain number of days in a period. So if I go to my service definitions, so if you look at the drop down here, we've added 2 new options here: work X days and work X working days. What this means is if I want to say, we do have, I believe we have, a worked 15 days already in the system, because that's pretty common. However, if you have a plan where it indicates a person works 10 days and they get a month, if they work less than 10 days, they get no credit for that month, then, we have a need to populate something like this. And instead of creating something that's worked 10 days or worked 9 days, we now have the ability to just indicate what your value is so that you can, we don't have to add any more drop downs here. So the difference between days and working days is going to be all days within the month, Sunday through Saturday. Working days is strictly going to be Monday through Friday, and this does not account for holidays, since all locations have different holidays. So moving on to the covered compensation sample table. So whenever you're setting up a covered compensation table, or a covered compensation definition, you have the ability to preview your results by clicking on the table button. And so let's say I want to look at what the future years will look like. I'm calculating. Previously, you had to input a percentage as a decimal to get the projection to work properly, but we've just changed this to be 1%, 2% just shown, because we are showing a percent sign there. So figured it's easier, less cumbersome to just say 2 or 2.5 to show what a projection in the wage base would do for the covered comp table here. All right, for account definitions, we've added another checkbox. We look at our account definitions. Previously, we did have a checkbox for allowing final negative account balances. So if your account did eventually dip into the red, it would come out as a 0 final balance, even if it was calculated to be negative prior to the application of this checkbox. What we found was people were getting lump sums, and potentially their balance would be negative at a particular period of time. And maybe you want to just indicate that if the balance went negative, just 0 it out, and then continue. The person's rehired, you want to go from 0 from that point. You basically would just check this new checkbox that says allow, or sorry, you uncheck this box that says allow interim negative account balances. So this is going to be checked by default for any of your current accounts. You can uncheck this box if you'd like to opt out of allowing interim negative account balances, since as of right now, balances are allowed to go negative in the interim. For derived date requirements, if you have a derived date for someone, or sorry, if you have a derived date definition, what you would have seen in the past is that when calculating, and actually this is a pretty significant change. Hopefully, if you have rule of dates, so points requirements, a person's age plus service. If you have those, what you would have seen is that service was not being calculated. Sorry, service was not being displayed on the calculate screen when calculating this value. So if I go into a particular person and I say that I want to calculate a person's rule of date, so in this case, I believe we have a rule of 90 set up. What we're going to see now is you have the rule of 90 date being determined, which has always been the case, but you're now going to actually see a service tab with the amount of service that was calculated for this particular person so that you know what that amount was plus the person's age. So we think this is going to be very helpful when trying to determine how the system calculated a particular rule of date. For person notes import, so now we're going to kind of move to the tools, or sorry, the ribbon interface of the software for a little bit. For person notes import, so if you wanted to import a series of comments or notes for your sponsor, let's say you're doing a takeover and there are a lot of notes that you want to bring on from a previous administrator, or maybe from your own group internally bringing it to DB Precision, you can go to the data tab. You do have to be in the sponsor, so we're going to swap into the sponsor, go back to the data tab. You have the ability to import person notes here, and what you will see is you have the ability to import a lot more information that you would like to have toggled, in the existing checkboxes for these particular notes. So again, you don't have to use any of these, only the ones that are filled in are required. Everything that has a 0 is not required, but you can allow to display. We have help topics to display how the format of these fields should be when you're importing. For the data request creation, for prior reported amounts display that include numeric to text conversion, we now include a key of values in the column header as a tooltip. So what this just means is, and I had an example of one of these data requests already created. It does take about 30 seconds, so I'm not going to run one right now. But basically, what you would see is that just like we already had for things like valuation status and other items and help for the user that's seeing the data request, if I went to valuation and I created a data request, any of these prior reported amounts that are highlighted here, and we highlight the group codes by default, the group code and the reason code, when I create this, there's going to be a tooltip comment to the top of the screen of the Excel file, and it's going to include the conversion. So if you have, 1 is police, 2 is fire, 3 is school employees, so on and so forth, it's going to actually show that conversion for you there. For work track task creation, I know we kind of touched on work track earlier, but another thing kind of separate from the actual setup of the work track. Here we're kind of talking about the creation of work track tasks. We recently added the ability for you to create work track tasks in batch using the export screen, even if, and now we're allowing you to do that even if no archive is being attached to a person's record. So what we mean by that is, let's say we're going to create a bunch of estimates for a certain population. Previously, if you didn't have the Save Results to Archive checkbox checked, the work track dropdown here would be disabled. But now what I can say is I actually do want to create work track tasks for every person who is in this export, but you're not going to actually associate the archives to the person's record yet. We have a client that wanted to create the archives individually, but they did want to get the process rolling of work track tasks for each person. So this was the way for them to do that. Because this is enabled now for all users, we saw there may be someone that is going to inadvertently create some work track tasks. So you would see, you now have the ability to, let's say you accidentally created some work track tasks. You can go to the Tools tab, you can go to Manage Workflow, and now you can delete multiple work track tasks at the same time. So these checkboxes were not here previously. They're there so that you can delete tasks in batch. For level income, option handling, this is going to deal with the way that the valuation extract is displayed and how a certain function is handled. But basically, if you have a person with a level income option and they are past their leveling date, for the valuation purpose, for the valuation extract, we now display the adjusted, after leveling benefit and payment form when you're running that snapshot. And then additionally, there's a get end latest function that we have where you can set what's called a dynamic indicator to true or false. So if you have that set to true, it will apply the new kind of calculated form of benefit and amount, as opposed to if you have the dynamic indicator set to false, it's going to be a straight return of what's in the person's record. So if you were regression testing, one valuation to another valuation from prior version to new version, you might see that some of your people that are past level income date might have different results in some of their columns. So just be aware of that. And then finally, we added payment processing as one of the options for a user plan sponsor rights exception. So some of our clients already use these sponsor rights exceptions, and some of our clients probably don't know what I'm talking about. So if I go into a particular user in DB Precision, I open them up, you always have the ability, just like people can be given access across the board, or maybe they're given view access only across the board in DB Precision, you always have the ability to lock down one or more of your sponsors if there's a particular sponsor that you don't want a particular user to have access to. So in this case, we've created already a sponsor right exception to ABC Bank for this particular user. If I click into this, what this means is that this person actually does have edit access for this particular sponsor, but what they don't have is they don't have payment processing access for this particular sponsor. So this is going to be your ability to say, okay, for one of these sponsors we have set up in DB Precision, I don't want to allow this person to have their normal rights for the sponsor. I created an exception, and now they are locked down a little more restricted, or maybe they're given more access potentially. They might be given access only to a dummy plan if you maybe have a trainee or something like that. So that concludes today's video. If you have any questions about what you've seen today, please call 860-540-3690 or email us at support@pensionsoft.com. Thanks. Have a nice day.